A story that could have a big impact on your wallet. Tensions are rising between the U.S. and China over trade after President Trump initiated new tariffs. Chinese state media described the Trump administration as a, quote, gang of hoodlums. Now, the U.S. has slapped levies on $34 billion worth of Chinese goods, and that number is set to rise in the next few weeks. So we want to get some perspective on this, how this all might affect you. Washington Post global economic correspondent David Lynch is joining us to break down all the numbers. So, David, $34 billion of Chinese goods. What kind of goods are we talking about, and is that going to hit us personally in the wallet?
Right. The first increment, that $34 billion, is going to hit industrial products much more than consumer goods. It's been designed by the Trump administration deliberately to minimize the impact on consumers. So you or I won't see an impact on things like iPhones, toys, clothing. It'll be products like hydraulic nozzles and valves and things that are used by companies to make other products that are part of a longer supply chain.
None of this sounds good for consumers like you and I. None of this sounds good for industry. So what is the president's end game here? Best case scenario, how does this benefit the U.S.?
Well, the president has said that these actions are necessary to try and compel China to change a range of what he regards as unfair trade practices, particularly involving the theft or misappropriation of U.S. intellectual property. The administration has accused the Chinese of stealing trade secrets via cyber theft and hacking, and also forcing U.S. companies to surrender their technology secrets, their proprietary information, in return for the right to do business in China. Now, critics say no company has to do that. If they don't like the terms of Chinese licensing, they can always stay home. But with China being such a large and fast-growing market, many multinationals feel that effectively they have no choice. So the president wants to use these tariffs to force China to change, but the Chinese regard a lot of these issues as sort of fundamental to their economic strategy going forward and their ability to develop and become more prosperous. So the likelihood of them caving on those most important policies seems pretty minimal.
So, David, the Chinese are now going to be coming back with tariffs of their own against U.S. imported goods. I wonder here if any of the tariffs that they're putting into place are designed to affect industries and consumers in geographic locations that include heavy Trump voters. I mean, you can go in after corn and soybeans, and that's Iowa, that's Trump country, whereas if you put tariffs on California wine, that's more of a Democratic stronghold. Is there any sort of political component to geographically where the Chinese are targeting their tariffs?
Yeah, there's no question. First of all, the Chinese and everyone else saw this trade war coming for the last year. The president had threatened to put tariffs on Chinese products during the 2016 campaign, and the Chinese began preparing their response over the past year. So they've been well prepared, and they have targeted their response to make Trump voters feel pain. And there's no secret about it. They're hitting agricultural districts in the red states, so to speak, politically, and they're hitting industries in places across the industrial Midwest that went for President Trump. And the idea is if they can make those Trump voters feel pain, they'll complain to their senators and their congressmen, who in turn will carry the message to the White House. This is no secret. President Trump knows they're doing that, and it's going to be a test of wills, I think, going forward.
Yeah, there are interesting economic times ahead. David Lynch, the global economic correspondent for the Washington Post, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.